All right, so the first leader that I focused on was Benazir Bhutto of Pakistan, and she served as prime minister for two non consecutive terms, the first from 1988 to 1990, and the second from 1993 to 1996. She was born in 1953 in Karachi, Pakistan, into a very politically affluent family. Her father, Zulfikar Bhutto, on the far right, was the fourth president and the ninth prime minister of Pakistan. He served as the primary influence of Benazir's political outlook. She went on to receive extensive education in the West, and it was her time at Harvard where she first experienced the collective power of the people and really saw her father's vision of democracy come to life. During her time abroad, her father was executed by his own military, and this was the catalyst for Benazir's engagement in politics for the following decades. She was initiated into the position of prime minister not only as the first woman to rule Pakistan, but to rule a Muslim majority state. Like her father, she pushed a democratic regime, and one of the first things she sought was progression and westernization. She freed all political prisoners, made media censor free, brought in CNN, BBC, and fiber optics into Pakistan, and she was a strong proponent of education. She opened 48,000 primary and secondary schools. She allowed for student unions. She brought drinking water and electricity to impoverished villages. And she also implemented the equality of women. She wanted to change the way that Islamic women viewed themselves by opening institutions such as women's police stations, just to reiterate that women can do the same tasks as men. Ultimately, Benazir Bhutto provided a fundamental opening of Pakistan after a decade of repression under militaristic rule. She was met with several challenges during her time in office. Although she held the position of prime minister, she was not respected by the president or the military and was treated very poorly. The military refused to take orders from a young woman, and she was subsequently forced out of power on false corruption charges in both of her terms, both military sponsored, and eventually self exiled herself in 1999 to avoid incarceration. In 2007, she returned to Pakistan hoping to regain power. However, she was assassinated a few months later, allegedly by the state. The second leader I focused on was Mustafa Kemal Ataturk. He was born in 1880, and in contrast to Bhutto, he was born into a middle class, not politically active family. His father was a junior civil servant, and his mother was a housewife. Ataturk went to military school when he was younger and served in the army for several years following that. It was then that he was exposed to ideas of nationalism, intellectual freedom, and democracy, and he rose to power with strategic and leadership successes during the fall of the Ottoman Empire. In 1919, he organized the Turkish Liberation Movement, which was victorious in gaining Turkey's independence. And so Mustafa Kemal Ataturk was named the first president of the First Turkish Republic in 1922. Like Bhutto, he imposed westernization and modernization. He replaced the Islamic calendar with the Western calendar. He replaced the Arabic language with the Latin alphabet, brought in Western clothing, and demanded that all Turkish people be sent to school and receive an education. He also pioneered women's rights. He discouraged veil wearing. He encouraged education and careers, same as their Western counterparts. And in 1934, women were granted full political rights. Ataturk also implemented his ideology of populism, which was aimed to destroy class distinction and class privilege, and he demanded equality throughout his country. He eventually secularized Turkey as well. Ataturk was met with some opposition, mainly through the abolishment of the Sultanate and sympathizers of the old Ottoman Empire. Other adversaries came in the form of old friends who felt that they were robbed of promotions that they deserved, and they did join with the caliphate to plan an assassination attempt on him. However, it was highly unsuccessful, and Ataturk was otherwise met with few opposition, and he died in 1938 due to cirrhosis of the liver. There are several similarities between Bhutto and Ataturk. They were both unyielding in terms of education for their people. They sought equality not just for women, but for all of their compatriots, and they sought to modernize and westernize their respective countries. Most importantly, they both held a broad vision of democracy in their Islamic states. However, there were two fundamental differences between the two leaders in terms of establishing democracy, and why Ataturk was successful in doing so and why Bhutto was not. The first was military control. Ataturk rose to power within the military, and therefore he retained the full command and respect of the military, whereas Bhutto was resented by them and was forced out of power twice and assassinated because of it. The second was the timing and location of their administrations. During the rise of Ataturk, certain sectors of Turkey had already been penetrated with ideas of democracy, nationalism, and intellectual freedom. And it was also during this time that Turkey was deemed the sick man of Europe amidst the ruins of Constantinople. So they found a great redemption in Ataturk and supported him wholeheartedly. Whereas in Pakistan, it had long been overwhelmed with the tide of Islamic fundamentalism, creating an incredible instability and a strict division among sympathizers and non-sympathizers, ultimately unable to support a democratic leader like Benazir Bhutto.